Hi everyone, Miss Knittycat here with another new stitch video, and in this one I'm going to show you how to do a zigzag lace. I previously posted another video of a zigzag lace that was a little bit more complicated than this one. This one is definitely more simple, so I would put this at an advanced beginner or intermediate level. And this sample that I've knit up here, it started out as just being a swatch. I had some leftover yarn and I used the mandala yarn for this one, which is a lighter weight yarn. I've provided the details in the description field as well as the details for the pattern itself. But I ended up having enough to make a little bit of a cowl. So what I did at the end was just seam up both these edges, and I don't think I did a great job seaming just with these because I wouldn't have started with this technique if I knew that I was going to make a cowl. I might have done a provisional cast on. But anyway, it ended up being a little cowl for my own personal use that I think will be nice because the fabric itself feels really light and airy, as you can see, and the pattern provides these. Actually, let me show you on this side. The pattern provides these beautiful chevrons or these V's, right, going up and down and up and down, and that follows all the way to the edge. So you get this beautiful scalloped edge, almost a V-shaped edge on either side of the pattern. The pattern itself is a 20-row repeat, but don't let that intimidate you because most of the rows are just repeating the same thing. The first set of 10 rows is pretty much one repeat, and then the second set of 10 rows was pretty much another repeat. And you actually end up, it knits in this direction. So you know, your first 5 rows or first 10 rows and next 10 rows, it's where the pattern zigzags, and that's how you get this. And you only really need to know a couple important stitches. I've cast on, I think, about 8. I'm going to cast on a couple more. I'm just using the long tail cast on. You can use any cast on of your choice. And I'm using double pointed needles just because they're short and easier for me to demonstrate on. Now the very first row, and that's going to be your right side, the pattern will tell you to do knit 1 and then starts the pattern repeat, which you do all the way to the last stitch. The pattern repeat goes yarn over and then an SKP, and what that means is you're going to bring the yarn to the front to do the yarn over, and then you're going to do an SKP, and what that is you slip one. So you're going to insert your needle as if to knit and bring it over without doing anything to it. So that's slip 1, then you knit 1. Now your yarn is in the front, you want it to be in the front. As you do that knit 1, you're creating that extra stitch, which is fine, which is exactly what we want, because the P of the SKP is where we're going to pass the slip stitch over. So you're going to take your needle, insert it into that second stitch, that stitch that we slipped, and you're going to pass it over this first stitch, like so. Okay, so we've decreased 1 stitch here by doing this SKP, but we've made up 1 stitch by doing that yarn over. So at the end of the day, your stitch count is going to remain the same throughout the row. So we're going to keep doing this repeat. So we'll see that a few more times. Yarn over, slip, knit, pass the slip stitch over. And you'll keep doing that till you get to the last stitch. At this last stitch, you're just going to do a knit 1. And that's the end of row 1. You turn your work. Row 2 and every even row in the pattern is going to be exactly the same. And that is, you're going to knit the first stitch. So in this pattern, the first and last stitches are always knit on every row. So you're going to knit the first stitch, and then you're going to purl all the way to the end, to the last stitch rather. Now, when you're doing this even row and purling the stitches, the one thing to watch for is that yarn over that we did in the previous row, because that stitch hangs a little bit loose, as you can see, and sometimes it can come off like that. But if that happens, don't panic. You can just pick that up like so and continue knitting. So we're going to knit, or rather purl it all the way to the last stitch. And at the last stitch, we're going to knit it. And that's the end of row 2. Row 3 is the same as row 1. So rows 3, 5, and 7 are going to be the same as row 1. So I'm just going to get started just so you can see. So row 3, you knit 1, and then you do the pattern repeat of yarn over, S, K, and P. Okay, so you're going to keep doing that to the end, row 3, and then row 4, same as row 2. So I'm going to keep knitting this all the way up to row 10 because it's essentially repeats of rows 1 and row 2 that I'm going to do 4 more times, right? And so I'll meet you back up once I've done row 10. So now I've completed the first 10 rows, and as you can see, I'm facing the right side for my next row, which would be row 11. For row 11, again, the first and last stitches are always knit. So we're going to knit that first stitch. And then for row 11, we're going to do a decrease, but we're going to do a decrease in a different way. We're going to do a knit two together. So we're going to insert the right needle into the front loops of both stitches on the left needle for the first two stitches and do a knit two together. Oh, I think I've split the yarn there. Let me try that one more time. And then you're going to drop off both stitches. And then you do the yarn over after that. Okay, so it's a knit two together, yarn over, and that's your pattern repeat all the way down to the last stitch. And now with the yarn in the front, because you've done the yarn over, you're going to do knit two together and yarn over. Okay, and again, we're decreasing one stitch, but then by doing that yarn over, we're bringing that stitch back. Now the important thing to do this is that after you've done this first pattern and you're used to doing the yarn over before the decrease, it's always important to remember to do this last yarn over after this knit two. I noticed that when I was doing this, I was routinely forgetting to do this last yarn over, and then I'd be one stitch less and I'd have to undo my work. And so just keep that in mind to make sure that you do the yarn overs after doing the knit two together. Okay, so that was row 11. And row 12, again, same as row 2. All of the even rows are going to be the same. So you're going to knit one, and then you're going to purl all the way down to the last stitch. And you're going to knit the last stitch. And so that's row 11 and 12. You're going to pretty much repeat the same rows till you reach row 20. So rows 11 and 12 get repeated till you reach row 20. So I'll show you row 13. You're gonna do a knit two, knit one, knit two together, and then a yarn over. Okay, so you'll keep doing that to the end. Yarn over, and that'll be row 13, and then turn to 14, and you'll start to see that this actually goes this way. Actually, I'll go ahead and I'll knit those up, and I'll meet you back up when I've done row 20. All right, so now I've done I've knit all the way through row 20, and you can see the pattern forming. The first 10 rows, it was going this way, and now these 10 rows, it's going that way. You'll start again, you'll repeat these 20 rows for the pattern, and as you do that, you'll start to see that zigzag forming. Now, a couple pointers here. If you can use a row counter, or you can start writing, just note down the rows when you're first starting off, just so that since it's multiple repeats of the same row, you want to make sure that you know which row you're on. Otherwise, if you end up doing too much on this side, knit a couple extra rows, your zigs and zags are not going to be of the same size, right, of the same width. So one way to know that is actually with each repeat, or with each 2 rows that you do, it forms one hole for that row, right? And so you can count the number of holes, and that's pretty much what I did rather than using a row counter. For the first 10 rows, it's going to form 5 holes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as you can see in this row going up, right? And then for the next 10 rows, it's going to form another 5 holes. So then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so if I was to leave this piece and come back and be like, well, did I finish up to row 20? Where did I leave off? If I'm not sure, all I can do is just count this. And then I know, oh, there's already 5 holes here. I must have finished row 20, which means now it's time for me to repeat the pattern starting from row 1 again. So that's one way of knowing if you're not using a row counter. Later, you'll just be able to tell by just looking at it. You'll know, you'll see the sizes, and you can either, you can make it out that way as well. Another variation you can do with this pattern is that if you don't want quite as big of a zig and a zag, if you want a shorter one, you need only repeat the first 2 rows maybe a couple times. So you'll only get like 3 holes, and then it'll start zagging. So your little bands here that are forming will be a little bit shorter, and you can make like a mini zigzag. Or you could choose to increase this and make this double the size, going one way and then the other way. I think if you're knitting a blanket pattern or something like that, increasing the size of the zigs and the zags might be good. If you're knitting a shorter project, like a smaller project, like a scarf or a cowl, then either this one or maybe a mini zigzag. So lots of little things that you can try here. Now, as you knit the project, what I noticed in mine was that it does tend to curl on either side. Even though I have a knit stitch on either end, it tended to curl on either side. So I did have to block it, and it'll flatten out, as you can see here, and then this beautiful edge becomes really nice and visible. And so I hope you give this pattern a try. If you have any questions at all, please leave me a comment in the comments field. If you like the video, click the like button, you know my spiel. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks as always for watching and supporting my channel. Happy knitting!